Underneath these thoughts about defeat is this question of how do I move through this without quitting? Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hello, my friends. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to everyone who's been listening for a while, and warm welcome to all you new people. I've seen lots of new people listening, which is so exciting. Today, we're going to talk about defeat. And you might be thinking, defeat? Why are we talking about defeat right before we're beginning a new year? We should be talking about goals for the new year and the word of the new year. And we're going to get to that next episode. But before we can get there, we need to look back on this year. We need to reflect on this year. And that used to be really, really, really hard for me because I would look back on the year that was ending and I would see the failures. I would see the false starts. I would see the good intentions that fell flat, the things I really missed. And I'd use that negative energy to create my new goals for myself, to prove something in this new year to myself, to my kids, to the world, that this year was going to be my year. This year was going to be different. So I'd set all my new goals with the emotion or energy or fuel of defeat and disappointment. I didn't realize I was doing that, but I was. And I don't want you to do that. So I want us to examine last year, but I want us to do that after taking ourselves through this deep dive on defeat. Because defeat is not something we want to be flavoring our new goals as we create new things in 2026, okay? So deal? Will you stick with me on this as we go through this episode? I sure hope you will, because then next week when we do a episode on creating the new year, you're going to be so ready. You're going to have clean emotions. You're going to have beautiful thoughts about this year, and you're going to be ready to create something really spectacular in 2026. Defeat is something I hear parents talk about constantly. Even if they don't use that word, they say things like, I've tried everything. Nothing works with my kids. I'm doing all the connection things and it's still not helping. I'm the problem. What's wrong with me? Why am I not normal? What was I even thinking? My life is chaos and it's too overwhelming. And those are actual direct quotes from the coaching that I've done with parents recently. A couple of them are literally from a call I did yesterday. And underneath all of these thoughts about defeat is this question of how do I move through this without quitting? Because when parents feel defeated, they usually don't want to make small adjustments. They either want to make some huge, unrealistic adjustment and switch things suddenly into a better place, which I totally understand. I've been there. Or they want to stop adjusting altogether and give in to their defeat. They might want to throw in the towel. They might want to just go back to the old way, or they tell themselves that their child is just too difficult or they're not cut out for something different. So today I want to talk very clearly and very practically about what defeat actually is, why it feels so intense in parenting and in marriage, and you could say in life in general. It feels so intense as we live our life, and how to use it instead of letting it take you out of the work you care about. So how to use defeat to be the catalyst for your next level of growth instead of the thing that hinders you and keeps you stuck. So let's pause for a minute and get clear on what defeat actually is. For the purpose of this podcast, and according to Google, defeat means being overcome by adversity or losing. I see that as a factual outcome. It's not helpful at all to see defeat as a personal failure. So from my point of view, you can be defeated in a moment, in a strategy, or in a situation without being defeated as a person. Defeat is when something does not work the way you intended it to work. It's a result, period, the end. What creates suffering is not the defeat itself, but the meaning that we assign to it. So in parenting, defeat is not, I'm a bad parent. That's a personal failure. That's unfixable, unsolvable. That's going to keep you stuck. Nothing positive or productive is coming out of that interpretation of defeat. What I'm challenging you all to do is to think about defeat as that approach didn't work in that moment. That's it. And just like we do with everything in Connect Method Parenting, we need to separate everything out. So we're going to talk about what actually happened and what was my thinking about what happened and what was I feeling about my thoughts. This is where STEER becomes essential, or Daily Peace, if you worked with me for a while, which incorporates a broader application of STEER. It's essential because most parents don't come to me saying, here's a specific situation that caused my emotion. They say, Andy, I feel defeated as a parent. Typically, they don't use the word defeated. They'll say, I'm failing. I can't do this. I'm overwhelmed. But in essence, they feel defeated as a parent. And that's where defeat becomes heavy because the statement is vague. You can't work with defeated as a parent, but you can work with, hey, yesterday at 6:30 p.m., my child screamed for 40 minutes until I finally lost my cool and yelled. Now, there's a situation. That's something we can work with. Defeat in that moment becomes manageable because we're specific. Now, one of the reasons defeat feels so intense in parenting and in life is because it feels personal in a way other defeats don't. So especially with parenting in marriages, it's so personal. Parenting is especially tender because we do make it so personal. If you just lose a game of Uno, you just lost a game, no big deal. And even if a business strategy fails, it's easier to say, oh, that strategy failed, and we're going to figure something else out. It's easier to disconnect yourself from the core situation and not make it personal. But when parenting feels hard, your brain doesn't typically say, oh, that moment just didn't go well. It says, I'm not good at this. I'm ruining my children. I'm not a good human being. How could I even think that about my kids? How could I yell at my child? What kind of parent does that make me? I love my child. How could I behave that way? Why? Because when it comes to parenting, especially, it doesn't feel like something you're doing. It feels like something you are. So when connection breaks down, the mind turns a moment into your whole identity. This is why it's so important to slow defeat down instead of letting it speak in generalities. You are not your worst moment. You are not your child's hardest day. You experienced a defeat in parenting in that moment. Something didn't work. Something fell short. That distinction matters. So I want to spend a little more time on vagueness because this is where most parents get stuck. When everyone says, everything is hard, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm failing, there's nothing to solve. There is nothing to solve. The nervous system hears danger, 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 and the brain can't work with that. It just goes into protection mode. Nervous system kicks into an activated state. The sympathetic nervous system comes online. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze goes into full effect, and you can't do much. We can't solve very well if our logical part of our brain is offline. So defeat grows when it's undefined and when you make it personal. But when you say, hey, mornings, those are really hard. Homework time, it escalates 9 times out of 10. Bedtime, that's where I lose it. Now defeat has edges. Specific defeat is workable. Vague defeat, it's paralyzing. So if you only take one thing from this episode, let it be this. Never argue with defeat when it's vague. Get specific first. So here's something important. When defeat hits, your nervous system is usually activated. This means that it is not the time to analyze, fix, or make decisions. This is where I want you to do something very simple. Let it suck. Let yourself feel horrible. Let yourself feel the negative emotions that are coming up. Just for a little while. If you yelled, if you shut down, if you handled something in a way you don't like, feel the disappointment, feel the frustration, feel the embarrassment if that's there. But don't camp there. Processing defeat is not the same as ruminating. Processing sounds like, that was really hard. I'm so disappointed. I wish things had gone differently. I'm really frustrated right now. Ruminating sounds like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I ever get this right? This always happens. One moves emotion through the body, and the other, the ruminating part, keeps it looping. So give yourself a window. For some people, that's an hour. For others, it's a day. But do not analyze defeat while you are emotionally flooded. Your conclusions will be harsh and unhelpful. Once the emotion charge has passed, defeat becomes incredibly useful. This is where we can stop making it personal and start making it practical. And there are 4 questions I want you to ask yourself. Question 1, why did the disconnection happen or the failure happen? Whatever it is, why did this thing happen? And it's not because you're a bad human or a bad person. I want you to be clear that that's not the case. Don't let yourself go down that rabbit hole. Nothing productive comes from that. So if you find yourself skipping down that path, which my brain loves to do, I have to bring it back in and say, no, I don't believe that anymore. And redirect it. Okay, again, brain, why did this situation happen? Why did this moment unfold in the way it did? Do a thought download. Do a steer. Go through the whole daily piece. Look at the facts. Were you exhausted? Was your child dysregulated? Was there a transition maybe you rushed through? Were expectations unclear? This question is about understanding. It's about getting curious, not about blaming, not about shaming. You cannot use this question against yourself. If you see yourself using this question against yourself, you are still emotionally activated. Pause and come back later. So question 1, why did this situation happen? Question 2, could I have stayed connected more? Could I have done something different? And how? The answer is usually yes. Once you're not activated anymore, you can see other options that could have been possible if you hadn't been activated in that moment. So looking at what other things might have been available to you, how you could have stayed connected with your kids if that's the issue, how you could have been less irritated with your spouse if that's the issue, whatever it is, once you're not activated, you can see how you might have navigated this situation differently if you hadn't been so activated, irritated, frustrated in the moment. And again, this is not to shame you. It's meant to show you possibilities. You were doing the best you could in that moment, but in another moment similar to that down the road, with the awareness you're having around it, now that you're looking at it and you're learning from it, you might be able to access some of those other possibilities that you're seeing now. So you're looking at this not from a shoulda, woulda, coulda, but from I can see that I could have been more careful to take care of my own emotions before I said something to my child. I could have looked at that mess that the kids made in the front room and not thought they were trying to defy me. Whatever it is, I can see now how my story around the situation or my day, just all the events that went into today, how I was activated because I had a fight with my husband and then the dishes didn't get done and then nobody ate dinner. Of course, I can see how bedtime went the way it did, and I can see how I could have done things differently that possibly could have impacted the situation. So if you can see how it could have gone differently, you're no longer helpless, you're learning. And you can start putting things into action so that next time you have a better chance of doing something else or seeing more possibilities in the moment. So question 1 is, why did this thing happen? Question 2 is, what other options could have been available to me if I would have been thinking or feeling differently? Question 3 is, what can I learn from this? I like to think as defeat as data. It's going to give me so much information if I let it teach me. So maybe you learn, hey, my child can't handle hunger plus homework, or I'm not able to parent well when I have just had a fight with my husband, or connection never works when emotions are activated. That's just valuable information so that I can prepare myself for next time. And finally, question 4, what's next? What do I want to do differently next time? How can I prepare for the next time this happens? This is where defeat stops haunting you from your past, where you stop living in shame and blame and activation, and you start making conscious decisions about how you want to show up next time. Good news is you don't need a perfect plan. Hallelujah. You just need a next plan. So what might I do next time this situation shows up? What could I do to prepare myself? If it's something that happens every day, like bedtime, what are some of the things I could start trying out that might set me and my kids up for success? That's how change actually happens. These questions work everywhere, with your partner, with habits you're trying to build, with emotional regulation. When you start doing this practice of asking yourself these questions when you've had a defeat, then defeat stops being something you fear and starts being something you expect and you use and you learn from, and becomes a catalyst to your next level of growth. This is the most important part of this episode. is defeat will always suggest quitting as a solution. So I want you to hear that. Defeat typically in our brains is associated with stopping. Your brain will say, this isn't working, this is too hard, I should just go back to what I know. But defeat shows up right before integration, before the new neural pathway feels natural, before regulation becomes easier, before connection deepens. If you quit here, if you let your brain make that association between defeat and quitting, you do not return to neutral. You return to patterns that already didn't work. You return to your old ways. So remember this. This is so important. Defeat does not mean you're failing. It means you're stretching. It means you're growing. It means you're becoming something new. And if you can make the defeat a productive experience, you'll mine for the gold, you will grow, and you'll be able to incrementally do a little bit better every single time. And even if that little bit better is just more awareness after the fact, eventually, if you're patient with yourself and you keep learning from every experience, it will get closer and closer and closer to the real life moment. And all of a sudden, one day, I've heard so many parents tell me this, one day all of a sudden it clicks. And in the moment, they're able to pause. And then they're able to stay grounded and compassionate. And then they're able to show up without being bothered at all. And these little baby steps lead to that. But it starts by just seeing defeat as a sign that you are on the right path, that this is part of being a human. It shows up right before integration begins. So don't quit. Defeat, it's part of the human experience. I haven't found any human that doesn't experience defeat. So when you find yourself disconnected from yourself, or from your children, or from your spouse, or you feel yourself defeated around something at work, or just by the state of the house. Maybe you beat yourself up over how you behaved. You accidentally yelled at your kids again. If you were irritated by what everyone is saying tonight, you just can't get over it, just so annoyed by everyone. I want you to know that this is part of parenting and it's part of humaning. I know that's not a word, I just made it up. Humaning, living. It's part of being alive on this planet. We want to experience the whole gamut of humanness, which means life is 50-50. Sometimes we're going to feel terrible and sometimes we're going to feel amazing. And we wouldn't know how amazing it felt if we didn't know how terrible it feels. Feeling defeat sometimes will crack us open in the best, most beautiful, humbling way so that we can see what's missing, where our little weakness is, where our nervous system needs a little more gentleness, a little more love so it can repair itself. This is the way to the next level. Feeling defeated is part of the growth system. So let it be uncomfortable. Let it be honest and hard and hurtful and all of the things. Don't make it personal. It's never personal. It's just an indication of where you are in your nervous system, where you are with your thought processing and what you're making things mean. It's telling you about your past experiences around different situations. And once you see it, you can decide that you want to do something about it. So don't let defeat decide what you do next unconsciously. Don't let it stay vague. Get very specific. Process the emotion, ask better questions, and keep going. And if you're working with me in one of my groups, come to the group and say, okay, here's how I felt defeated this week. Tell me the situation factually, and we'll go through this process. Also do it yourself. Even if you're working with me, go do it yourself. You have this Christmas holiday season, which I think is the best time of year to look at what's happening for us, both in real time, because our kids are home nonstop, 24/7 for a couple of weeks. And also as we reflect back on the year that we had, can we look at those moments that we've defined as defeat and mine for gold using these questions? So get specific, process the emotion, ask better questions around situations that feel like they've been a defeat, and keep going. Because the only way defeat actually wins is if you quit. I love you. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye, guys. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, come check out my Connect Method Parenting Coaching Program, where we take this material and we apply it using my proven formula. Head over to cmp.works/join.